for inviting me to chat to you tonight. It's amazing to see so many of you here. That's what are we at now? 48. And there's
40, yeah.
a couple of messages there in the chat about two that mad grandchildren was what Polly had
Mm-hmm.
said, which is great to hear because we need young people getting on the bats right now, like from as soon as they can walk, get them out in a bat walk, get them out there and away. So I'm not gonna, hopefully not gonna bore you too much. I'm just going to sort of take you on a fly through of bats in Northern Ireland, what sort of organisations there are dedicating their work to bats, how many species we have, what you can do to help them, and then, as I say, if I go through it and there's something maybe you don't understand or you have a question, just pop it into the chat and then we can look at it at the end. And I hope you can all understand my Derry accent all right, and I'm not talking too fast. That's another one. So to start off with, anyone that's not familiar with the bat world in Northern Ireland, there's three organisations dedicated to conserving them. The Northern Ireland Bat Group is the overarching grassroots charity. We would sort of do the activities for the two umbrella organisations. So Bat Conservation Trust is our main umbrella organisation. So we run our bat care through them. Our insurance goes through them. So we're affiliated to Bat Conservation Trust. So a lot of their monitoring programs as well, our volunteers would help with the likes of the roost counts, and I'll chat about them later. And then with Bat Conservation Ireland as well, a lot of our volunteers would do the Debenton survey. I don't know, maybe some of you have done the Debenton's waterway survey on here as well, but I'll chat a bit more about them later on. So the Northern Ireland Bat Group, for anybody that's not familiar with us, we were set up in 1985 when bats first achieved protected status in the province. And since then, it has grown and it's a registered charity now. And one of the main sort of things that we would do is rescue and rehabilitate bats. So if someone finds a bat in their garden that's injured or their cat brings them in a bat, we would send out our ambulance drivers. They would bring it to either a vet or a bat carer, and we would assess the bat's condition. And then if it needs treatment, we work with the vets and we get them back to full health and hopefully then released into the wild again. And then we do a lot of monitoring work as well with Bat Conservation Trust and Bat Conservation Ireland, and I'll talk more in detail about them later on. We also run training, so anyone that's interested in being a roost visitor or getting their bat handler's license, or maybe they want to become a bat carer, we offer free training to anyone that's interested in that as well. We have a lot of resources on our website, including if you're a teacher or you work with scout groups or youth groups, there's an education pack in there with loads of free downloadable resources like colouring and arts and crafts, quizzes and things like that. So you're welcome to download that anytime. We also give advice to councils, the general public, and anyone that has a question about bats in Northern Ireland. And events wise, we would run bat talks and walks, quizzes, and then our own member events too across Northern Ireland. So that's just a wee bit about who we are. Now, what are bats? They're mammals. So they have fur, they're warm-blooded, they give birth to live young, so the female will give birth to one pup, sometimes twins, depending on the species, and she'll feed her pup with milk. So what sets them apart from all mammals is the fact that they can fly. They're the only mammal in the world capable of true flight. At the minute, there is, would I get the right figure? 1,487 bat species worldwide. And the biggest bat you can see there is the giant golden crown flying fox. It has a wingspan of around 5 feet, which is huge. They're really important in the Philippines. They regenerate the rainforests out there. And then the smallest bat in the world is Kitty's hognose bat, or the bumblebee bat, which is, as you can guess, the size of a bumblebee. So diets and things vary. I'll talk about what bats eat later on because I'm going to be asking you like a wee quiz in the middle as well. But bats are found in all continents except the Arctic, Antarctic, and a few oceanic islands. So they're widespread all over, but they're really special in that they're the only mammal that can fly. Now, they're really adapted to flight. This is just a picture of a Weisler's bat's wing. So how bats are adapted to flight is that they have long, elongated fingers, and it's covered in a membrane or patagium, it's called. And this enables them to fly. They also have a high metabolic rate. So when a bat's flying, their heart rate can reach 900 beats per minute, which is huge. They're also long lived. So the oldest bat ever recorded was 41, and it was a bronze bat found in Serbia. Now, when bats are flying, they use echolocation. So when they're flying, they emit really high frequency sounds, known as ultrasound, and it bounces off objects and bounces off prey, and they're able to find their way in the dark to catch the prey and navigate through cluttered environments. So really, really adapted to flight, especially at night, so that we know that they're nocturnal. And if you look at the photo closely as well of the bat, you'll see it actually has a thumb. See at the very top where my finger is, if you go across, you see a thumb. And on that thumb, there's a wee claw. And when bats land, they use that wee claw to climb up and hang on to things. And their feet are also adapted too for hanging. When a bat locks on, their feet lock together and the claws don't move. So even if the bat's fast asleep, he won't fall off because the mechanism in his toes lock him in place and he can't move. So really amazing mammals, and there's a lot to learn. They're so small, but there's so much to learn about them even now. You learn something new about them every day. So why do we actually need bats? Not just because they're adorable, but they're pest controllers. So here in Northern Ireland, one pipistrelle bat can eat over 3,000 midges in one night. So that's great news if you like barbecues, camping, going swimming, fishing, anything involving the outdoors during the summer months. And then in places like Brazil, they're important pest controllers for crops such as rice, cotton, and chocolate. And not only does it increase yield of these crops, but it saves money and it actually helps people too because they don't need to use pesticides or anything, which is good for our health. Now, there's like over 500 plant species as well pollinated by bats. And that includes things like mango and banana. So if you like smoothies, you should be thanking the bats, same as the chocolate. Seed dispersal, they're really important for regenerating forests in places like Central and South America. So they spread the seeds after eating the plant. And then in places like Asia, the bat is a symbol of good luck. So if you hang a totem of a bat on your door, it's said to bring you good luck and fortune. And then you have the biodiversity indicator side of things. So that video that you see at the top is actually the Benton's bats flying along a river. Now, bats can give us important clues to the health of the wider environment because if those bats suddenly disappear and they've been recorded every single year before, you would sort of want to look at the water quality to see has something happened to their prey? Has the water quality gone down that their prey has disappeared? Has there been a pollution incident maybe? So bats are really important indicators as well for the environment. And then nature therapy. I mean, if any of you have ever been on a bat walk or even just sat in your garden in the evening and it's like the moon's out and it's just so quiet and relaxing, it is brilliant for your mental health as well. And if you go on a bat walk, some of the places will be taking you as well. It'll be good for your physical health too. Um, so that's some of the reasons why we need bats, but there's more. Uh, in Northern Ireland, we have 8 resident species, but in the island of Ireland, there's 9. The lesser horseshoe bat was found in 6 southwestern counties. But we haven't recorded up here yet, but that's not to say that that won't happen, or maybe we have other species we don't know about yet. We just haven't recorded them. But I'm not going to go into too much detail about each species because we've only got like 40 minutes or so. So I'm going to just explain about our smallest bat and our largest bat. So the smallest bat we have is the pipistrelle. It weighs less than a packet of crisps and can fit inside a matchbox. They're tiny and they're the most encountered species that we would get in our rescue program. So you'll find them mostly roosting in houses in large numbers. Like some of the roosts that we visited, there's been over 1,000 bats in them. And it's usually soprano pipistrelles in those kind of numbers. Now they're the ones that you'll see in your garden flying around head height, performing all these amazing acrobat aerial flight patterns. So just at about half an hour after sunset, if you go out into your garden and you see bats sort of flying head height, chances are it's pipistrelles. Then you have the Leisler's bat. They're the first to emerge in the evening, and sometimes they're so big, they're about the size of the palm of your hand. They're big enough that some people would confuse them with swifts because they come out around the same time as them. They fly really, really high up, high above the trees, and they're sometimes called the hairy arm bat because they have like a ridge of fur going on the inside of their forearm. And they're also called the Irish bat because we have a European stronghold for the species. So if you go over to mainland UK, the Leisler's bat isn't very abundant over there, but if you come here, it is. So we've a really important population of Leisler's bats here. So if you want more information about each species, you can go onto our website and there's loads of links and videos showing you all about them, their habitats, their food. And then I've seen somebody too has bought a book about bats as well, which is great. That tells you more information about it. So we're learning more about all these species every day, and they're just for such small animals that they're complicated. So the next thing that I'm taking you into is the year in the life of a bat, and it's not set in stone because of climate change and other factors. We're finding that the year is sort of drawn out a wee bit different. So in March, they'll be waking up on sort of milder nights and going out to feed because their fat reserves will be running low through the winter. Now, when female bats wake up, they'll be pregnant. They'll give birth usually in June. And between June, July, and August, that is the main bat activity season. That's when the monitoring programs happen because that's when bats are most active. They're out feeding on insects every night. The females are trying to fatten up in order to produce milk and feed their pups. So come September, then the juveniles will be flying on their own. They'll find their own roosts, and the females will move into woodland usually and mate with the males. And then come sort of November time, they'll start moving into hibernation sites. Now, in Northern Ireland, we don't actually know where bats go. It's a big gap in knowledge that we sort of have to work on. And during hibernation, they'll go into torpor and they won't usually wake up to March. But as I say, this isn't set in stone anymore because of climate change. The weather, the temperatures are slightly higher. They're not hibernating as long. They might hibernate earlier. They might hibernate later. They might emerge earlier, and they might find that there's no insects. That even though the temperature inside where they're roosting might be high, if they go outside, it might be terrible weather and there's no insects for them. So they've actually wasted a lot of energy waking up and trying to find food, and there is none. So I'm going to talk about climate change a wee bit later on and how the potential impacts of that. But a question we get asked a lot is, where do bats roost? Now, this all depends on the species, the surrounding habitat, and the time of year. Now, soprano pipistrelles would be roosting in houses. So within the houses, you could get them in the ridges, you can get them under the eaves, in the attic, and then sometimes in older houses with big porches, you might get whiskered bats sitting in them. And then you have, I don't know if you can see the cave there on the right, that was Dunmore Cave. When we were down there, we found de Benton's bats and brown long-eared bats all roosting inside the cave, and that was in September. Then that house below it, there was brown long-eared bat in the attic, and there was soprano pipistrelles as well too along the eaves. And the tree that you can see there at the bottom, there was Leisler's bats in that. And the church on the right was a big brown long-eared roost. So the bats were actually roosting inside open church. So you can see the wooden arches and stuff. There's gaps behind that. So they were actually just sitting up on that and then flying out onto the outside to the graveyard then in the evening. So it all depends on species and it all depends on what's available for them to roost in. But a bat only needs about a quarter-inch gap to get in to roost somewhere. Remember how tiny they are? Like a pipistrelle can fit inside a matchbox. So this is a wee question for you. What do bats eat? Now, it could be bats around the world. What sort of things do you think bats might eat? Anyone want to hazard a guess? Any hands?
Moths?
Yep, that's one. Well done.
Feel free to come off mute, anyone, if you do want to answer, or you can pop it in the chat if you would prefer to do that.
I will give you the answer. Sorry?
Midges.
Well done. Brilliant. They love midges.
There are
So
some
I'm gonna
species
show
that
you.
eat fish as well. Oh,
They eat, sorry?
fish as well, but you've just shown the answer.
Well done. I'm impressed. They do. There's some species that do eat fish. There's some that eat meat. Most of the bats in the world eat insects, but you do get the ones that eat fruit and nectar as well. And then you have 3 species that eat blood. Now, they don't hunt humans or anything. They don't hide in cupboards and jump out at you and drink your blood. The vampire bats are found in Central and South America, and they feed on the blood of like farm animals, birds, maybe even other bats. Um, so it just shows you the varied diets around the world. So that's the 1,487 species worldwide. And this is a wee video just explaining what bats eat in Ireland. So it was a project that was done in Dublin. They analysed the DNA of bat droppings to see what was actually in it, what did the bats eat, and this is what they found.
In total, 6 different bat species were identified from the bat droppings collected by our citizen scientists. The most common of these were the soprano pipistrelle and the common pipistrelle. Our Irish pipistrelle bats are so tiny that they can fit into a matchbox. Our brown long-eared bats, also among the common bats we identified, have ears that are the same length as their bodies, and their sense of hearing is so excellent that they can hear the sound of insects crawling on leaves. We also identified the insects hunted by these bats. Irish bats eat a broad range of insects. The majority of bat prey belong to true flies. This group of insects includes midges and mosquitoes. Other flying insects included moths, caddisflies, mayflies, lacewings, and beetles. We also found some non-flying prey such as millipedes. In more than half of the samples, we recorded DNA belonging to crane flies, which are otherwise known as daddy longlegs. In fact, most of the bat species we sampled had eaten crane flies. The marsh crane fly and the common European crane fly are well known to gardeners and farmers. The larvae of these flies, or leather jackets, eat roots and sometimes leaves of young seedlings. They can damage vegetables, pasture, and they can cause serious damage to crops like winter barley. These initial findings suggest that Irish bats may be very useful for Irish agriculture. We are continuing to analyse the results thanks to our citizen scientists. To find out about further discoveries, visit batsandbugs.ie. This project was funded by the Community Foundation for Ireland and National Parks and Wildlife Service.
So we're sort of looking at the ecosystem services that bats provide. And when you think about it, in Ireland, like the amount of crops and things destroyed by leather jackets, there's more research to be done to see if it's actually significant, but it's a good start. But worldwide, I had some figures there for you. If I can find it now. So in Spain, there's a codlin moth in Spain, and they found that with the presence of bats, that the reduction of affected apple trees, so these codlin moths would damage the apple trees. So they removed bats to see what the effect would be, and then they did another experiment with the bats being there, and what they found was with bats being present, there was a 32% reduction on the damage done to the trees, which means the bats are actually helping increase the yield, and then the farmers aren't using pesticides as well, so it's saving money and it's saving human health as well in the wider environment. Now in America, bats are actually worth $1 billion to the corn industry. And then you have here as well, midges, 3,000 midges in one night. So there is the pest control element as well too. So we want to get that across to people, that bats are important. Now, the threats, I've had to sort of reduce them down a wee bit, but you might have seen these in the news, and I won't go into the detail of what they are. You probably know already what it was about. But negative publicity and inaccurate reporting is a big factor, especially recently. And Bat Conservation Trust are absolutely amazing. They jumped on these right away. So if you want to see what they've written, go to their blog on their website, and they have sort of put out statements explaining the reality of these sort of comments. So if you check out their blog, it's important to sort of jump on the negative publicity and especially the inaccurate reporting as well. Habitat degradation, the same for all species, like bats rely on trees, hedgerows, rivers, grassland, connected habitat. So if you remove habitat, it's going to affect bats and other species as well. Roost loss, either directly or indirectly, that could be in a storm, a tree falling down, that roost's gone, so the bats will have to move on and find something else. But for development, some people might need to exclude bats to make way for development. And if it's done under license and there's proper mitigation, then that's grand, because the bats will come back and they'll have a roost to come back to. But if it's not done right, that roost's lost and the bats have to go again and find somewhere else. And if it's done at the wrong time of year, like for example, when the bats are coming out of hibernation and maybe the female's already pregnant, it's putting extra stress on her and it could affect her baby as well too. Water pollution, as we were saying earlier, if the Benton's bats suddenly disappear from an area, it could be that their prey has disappeared, and you would sort of be looking, has the water been polluted in some way, or is there been some development works done on the actual water body? Artificial light, this is well documented. Bats and lightning don't mix, especially some species more than others, like the brown long-eared bats. They really don't like light. The Bentons don't like light. They'll avoid it. And lighting up a roost can actually entomb the bats. They don't want to come out if the roost's lit up. And then you've the lack of education and awareness. So for example, say a pest controller went down the attic and they found droppings. They thought it was rats or mice, and then they used them horrific glue traps that you see. They put the glue traps down thinking that it's rats or mice, and it turned out to be bats. What happens, the bats actually get stuck in it and they send out a distress call. Other members of their colony try to come down to help and they get caught too. So there's this lack of education and awareness. So can also affect them. So it's important for us to sort of make everyone that could encounter bats aware that this is what happens if you do find bats, and this is what their droppings look like, and this is who you contact if you do find bats. Direct fatalities. I don't know if you saw the BBC News article that a bat was killed by a cat after traveling a 1,200-mile journey. Believe it or not, cats are a big problem when it comes to bats, because if a cat finds one bat coming out of the roost, it will return to the roost and keep going after each bat as they emerge. So it's not the cat's fault. They're doing what they do, and being cats. But for cat owners, we sort of appeal to them to keep them in for an hour after sunset to let the bats emerge safely, and just keep an eye on them. Maybe don't let them roam all night and bring them in again before bed so bats can return safely into the roost as well. Other direct fatalities could be roads as well. We've found sort of dead brown long-eared on the sides of roads. And wind turbines, there's a lot of research going on at the minute to find out what's actually happening with bats and wind turbines. Some species are affected more than others. There's a lot of research into what can be done to reduce the impact on bats, including the use of conservation detection dogs. Sure, he's probably heard of Caroline and her conservation detection dogs. A lot of her work would be centered around finding bats and identifying what species is there. and which of them would be affected more by wind turbines. So there's a lot of threats. Now, climate change is a separate one. So the impacts in hibernation, it can affect the internal temperature and humidity of the inside the roost itself. It could mean that the bats emerge too early, thinking that it's spring and it's actually still January. And they use their reserves, what little reserves they have, they wake up and go out and fly, and then they find that there's no prey. So a lot of the times then when you find grounded bats, it's usually because they're exhausted and they're in need of nutrition basically, and mostly too the dehydration, because bats have a lot of skin membrane and things, so they're really susceptible to losing water from their bodies. So higher temperatures is really not good for bats. Predator prey mismatches. So, for example, if the bats come out and like some of the insects that they rely on haven't hatched yet, that can affect them as well, because they need this delicate balance of food being available in order to produce milk to feed their pup, and then they need the food to be available then in the autumn to fatten up for hibernation. If they don't have enough fat for hibernation, they're not going to make it through the winter. Then there was this sort of connection with new species. So this has been sort of highlighted that there's a potential for nocturnal to be coming to Northern Ireland. And it's sort of up in the air of what might happen, but with conversations with like the Bat Conservation Trust, they've sort of found that nocturals and liselars are more adapted to the buildings, whereas nocturals are more trees. So if a lot of research is probably needed under that to see how this would actually impact on liselars. And again, droughts and high temperatures and roosts a big one, because the temperature increasing inside roosts is unbearable for the bats, because when you think about it, if there's over 1,000 bats with their body heat inside the roost, they're all packed together, it gets really hot in there, and they have fur, remember, as well. So some of them will actually sit outside the roost entrance during the day to try and cool down, and that makes them susceptible then to predators and things, and being in high temperatures as well will dehydrate really quickly, so they'll need help. And that's where we would come in then. If bats are found to be dehydrated, we would take them in and rehydrate them and try and get them back to full health and release them again. Flooding inside cave systems is another one. So with rising sea levels and rivers rising and all, more water going in to the groundwater, it's going to affect our caves as well. But we don't actually know enough about bats and caves in Northern Ireland really at the minute. So a lot of research has to be done on that. Extreme weather events. I mean, that last storm that we had was horrific. A lot of big trees were taken down, but derelict buildings were damaged. So bats would rely on these types of structures for roosting in, and if they're damaged or removed completely, the bats have to find somewhere else. So has anyone ever encountered bats during the winter? It's just a question, just interested in. So if you raise your hands, even you don't have to say anything or anything. If there's a show of hands or put something into the chat, that would be really useful for us. And if you do know of a roost, even if it's during the summer, let us know about it, because we can only protect bats if we know where they are. So what can we do to help? Keeping an eye on bats is one thing. So monitoring is the key to identifying the trends. So whether a species increasing, decreasing, or stable. And this then, the results of monitoring schemes then go on to inform policy and legislation. So it's really important that we know what bats are doing and how their populations are doing and where they're roosting and how they're using the wider habitat. It all feeds in together. And then we, as a bat group, would do the National Bat Monitor Programme for Bat Conservation Trust. So we are training people how to do roost counts. So this is a great one. Even if you have a bat roost in your house, you can turn this into like a family activity. There's loads of stuff you can download from the Bat Conservation Trust website, with games and things, all bat themed games, and you can have a barbecue and all, make it into a big family event. So all it really involves is 2 counts are done in June. You sit below the roost. You could be just sitting in your chair with your cup of tea, watching the bats come out and count them. And everything's done now online, and it's really easy to do. You just sign up and create your own login details, and that'll be your roosty survey every year. So it's really worthwhile survey, and we're sort of trying to push more people and they help them with it, because the more roosts we have in Northern Ireland getting counted, the better understanding we'll have of what they're actually doing and how the roosts are faring. So this is what a roost count would look like. Hope you can hear it. So it's soprano pipistrelles. So this is all you're doing. You're sitting in your chair, just counting them as they come out. It's really therapeutic too. You're just, and you can hear Eliza now in the background as well. So you find out so much just sitting in your own garden. So the Debentons Waterway Survey is Bat Conservation Ireland's biggest monitoring survey. So there's over 250 volunteers take part every year. You don't need experience. All equipment's provided, all the training's provided online, and all it is you're walking a kilometre route along the water body, and you're counting the bat passes of the Debentons as they go past you. So it's a really long running scheme, and the results I'm going to talk about later on are really important, because it shows the state of our rivers and our water bodies as well, and where the Debentons bats are actually found. Now, the Care-based monitoring survey is another all-Ireland scheme. So it looks at 3 target species: the common, soprano, pipistrelles, and lizer. And it's basically survey squares are surveyed in July and August every year. And there's over 70 volunteers involved in it. And you basically drive around your square, and it looks mad because you have a detector sticking out of the side of your car, and you have a wee, do you know, like a light, do you know, like an orange sort of, I don't know, what are they actually called? The wee flashy light. And you're driving at 20 miles an hour along your transects, and you're recording the bats as you go, and you're also picking up other mammals as well. Like if you've seen a badger or if you've seen a hedgehog, whether they're dead or alive, you record that too. We record the changes in lights as well. If from the previous year, if there's new lights installed, you would make a note of that. So it all goes in to form sort of bigger research. So we're always looking for more volunteers every year for both of those surveys. So if you go to Bat Conservation Ireland's website, you can sign up. Now this is a new one. It's only in its 2nd year at the minute, and it's to look at what's happening with our nectars and whiskered bats, because it's the first time monitoring them. So we don't actually know much about their habitat or their roosts or foraging habitats. So the equipment and all, it's the same as the Debentons. You don't need experience. All training and equipment's provided. So all you're doing is walking along a woodland in teams of 2 or 3 people in June, July, and August with the special bat detector, and you just post it back then to the coordinator. So that's David's email there on the screen if anybody's interested. We are looking for more sites in Northern Ireland. So it would be great to connect with yourselves as well, because I know you have a lot of amazing reserves that could maybe be included in it too. It'd be good to know what's happening in your reserves. So this is the results of the 2023 care monitoring programme. We're working on this year's at the minute for all the schemes, so the report hasn't been published yet, but it shows increases in the 3 target species, which is great, and an upward trend for the Nethusiast pipistrelle too, which is great, but a downward trend in Myotis. So that could be to do with habitat management, lighting. So again, more research is needed under that. And the Debentons Bat Waterway Survey, that showed a higher increase for Debentons bats in Northern Ireland. But it's not statistically significant compared to the Republic. So the woodland monitoring as well, that hasn't been published yet. So the report will be out now probably in the next month or two. So if you keep an eye on Bat Conservation Ireland's website, under publications, you'll see a list of all the reports. Now, here is what we do rescue-wise. So this is the fun part of the rescue, is releasing them back into the wild. So you see how excited he gets when he sees the insects all around him. So he was really lucky to be found at a vet's, of all places. So he got help right away, and then he was released successfully and back into his roost. So rescuing is another way to help bats, because especially say it's a pregnant female or it's juveniles that were just born that year. All bats, every individual is important, and they need help in order to help the local population. So it's important that we rescue them all and get as many back to the wild as we can. So loving the night sky. So light pollution is a big issue for all wildlife, really all nocturnal wildlife. So here is a wee tip that we sort of promote. If you are sitting in the evening with your curtains are all open and your lights are all on and you've outdoor lights, if you turn that off and even just close your curtains, you see there's a big difference from the light spill into your garden. So we want to try and keep this as dark as possible for wildlife, because as I say, especially if you've a roost as well, it's the entrance to the roost and there's maybe a security light or something below it. It would be important to move that security light away from the roost entrance so that the bats can emerge safely and that they're not put off, they're not entombed inside the roost. But if you're interested in the whole dark sky concept and projects, if you go to darksky.ie, there's loads of information about it, and they run loads of events too that might interest you too online. So Bat Conservation Ireland has launched this new initiative called Gardening for Bats. It's to encourage people to do small things in their own garden to help bats. So the big tips in it really is follow the principles of the pollinator plan. So don't mow, let it grow, retain any trees and hedges in your garden, choose native species, maybe have some sort of a water feature, keep an eye on cats, maybe keep them in for an hour after sunset and then let them out and bring them in again then before bedtime. Install bat boxes where you can. This photo here of the boy putting up the bat box is actually a vineyard in Spain, and that bat box is actually used to transport their wine bottles. So if you order roost wine, it comes inside a bat box. So it's an initiative that they've got going with the local bat conservation charity over there. And when they post it out, then they encourage people to buy their products to put up the bat box in their own garden too, which is great. So I'm going to show you this wee video about what Gardening for Bats is. So that's the website if you're interested in taking a look and getting some of the free resources.
Welcome to Gardening for Bats. This is a project by Bat Conservation Ireland with funding from the Heritage Council. Bats are mammals and give birth to a single pup in early summer. There are 9 species of bat resident in Ireland and they all eat insects and other invertebrates. Bats are protected species because they declined so much in many parts of Europe in the 20th century. We can do a lot to help bats by boosting biodiversity in our gardens, protecting and creating roosts, and ensuring the landscape is connected for bats. The Gardening for Bats project is a response to a question we often get asked by members of the public. What can I do for bats? For this series of short videos, I've been in the fortunate position of being able to visit a number of beautiful gardens in counties Meath, Dublin and Wicklow to see what gardeners and communities have done to encourage pollinators, birds, biodiversity and of course bats to their green spaces. I visited Sharon's garden in Ballyfermot in Dublin to see the gorgeous wildlife sanctuary she's developed in a small suburban back garden. I also visited Rosie's showstopper garden in Meath, where she's been planting herbaceous borders and flowers that attract nighttime pollinators and are good for bats. I also visited the Kingfisher project in Harold's Cross in Dublin on the banks of the Poddle River, where a local community tends allotments and teaches sustainability and the circular economy to local school children and other visitors. I visited Wild Acres in Wicklow, where owners Brian and Gilly decided that they wanted to rewild for wildlife. And finally, we've taken a look at my own fairly chaotic garden here in County Meath to take a look at the native plants that I've sown here and also ones that have spread here naturally. There are an estimated 2 million gardens in Ireland covering around 350,000 acres of land, and that doesn't include balconies that are increasingly common in our urban areas. Gardens are hugely important spaces for us. We like to play, socialise, store things, dry clothes, and be creative in our gardens. People who garden are likely to benefit from lower stress levels and better mood. Increasingly, people want to combine using their gardens for all of these purposes, as well as supporting biodiversity and wildlife. We've created some videos under the following topics. Easy techniques that you can use to garden for bats. What features you can develop in your garden to encourage bats. Choosing plants that are good for insects and therefore good for bats. And finally, seeing as one good turn deserves another, how bats help you, the gardener. There are many ways anyone with an outdoor space or who's involved in community or tidy towns initiatives can help bats. Imagine how much we could benefit wildlife if we all did just a little bit more to boost our biodiversity. For more information, see gardeningforbats.com or watch the rest of the videos in this series.
So that's just to give you a wee idea of sort of some of the resources that are out there. Bat Conservation Trust also has a big area of their website dedicated to gardening and to bat boxes and things too. So check out both of them if you are a keen gardener. So another thing you can do to help bats is educate, spread the word about bats. If you've spotted negative or inaccurate stories on social media, using that hashtag love bats as well too, it all helps. So learn more. Now I've put in this online training platform. So for anyone that's sort of interested in learning more about bats from like a more in-depth perspective, so learning about using bat detectors, about using night vision, you sign up for free and it takes you through all the modules and you do it at your own pace as well too. So it's all done online. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to the online training platform, the link there. I can send it to yourselves as well if needs be. And anyone that's interested in schoolwork or if you work with scouts or anything, the Learn About Bats website's a good one as well too. And if you need to contact me at any stage, you can get me at Karen Hitch. And then the chair at the minute of the Northern Back Group is Mary. So if you have specific questions about membership or anything to do with the Northern Back Group, that's the email to send it to as well. So I'm just going to open up to questions, but I just want to thank you all for coming along tonight. I know you are probably busy after work and getting families and all organised, so I really appreciate you staying here and listening to me ramble on. But if you have any questions at all, just let me know. I'm just going to stop sharing here. How are we doing for time?
We've got about 10 minutes until past, so that was perfect. That was fascinating, and I definitely have a newfound appreciation for bats, so I hope everyone else felt the same. And just looking through the chat, and we do have some questions. If anyone else does want to ask something, please pop in the chat and I'll just work through them. And then if there's time at the end, we can obviously let people unmute if you want to ask Karen something directly. So the first one is, what bat is the most common and what is the rarest?
That's a good question. The most common bats are the pipistrelles. So you would think common pipistrelle would be most common, but soprano tends to be more common and bigger numbers as well. But overall, the two common and soprano pipistrelles are very most common. The rarer ones would be the myotis, so the woodland species that we don't have a lot of information about, the natterers and the whiskered. And there's another pipistrelle called enthusiast. It is spreading out from Lough Neagh. We're finding them further afield. So that's another interesting species. It's another stronghold for the species too in the UK that we have actual known maternity sites, whereas nowhere else in the UK does. So it's a big research focus point for that particular species as well.
And then another one, there was one about food, but I think you've covered that pretty well. So hopefully that answers the question about their food. Alistair had asked, with the vampire bat feeding on blood, was that what inspired vampires?
I don't know. I'd assume so. Like when you think the bats were there first, so there's the possibility of that. But they don't feed on human blood, as we know. So they don't hunt us or anything. They don't turn into Dracula. But did you know that research scientists have actually isolated a glycoprotein in the vampire bat saliva, and they've named it Draculin, and they're looking to develop stroke medication, blood pressure medication, and heart medication from it.
Wow.
Draculin, what a class name.
Mm-hmm. Top marks for marketing people there. And you may have already answered this one, but what do you call a group of bats?
Colony.
Okay.
So you have a colony. So they're all in the roost, and that's their colony.
That makes sense. And then you've touched on this throughout, what we can do to help bats and inform people more, but is there anything else that we can do to help?
Spreading the word, raising awareness, like I was saying, especially for the pest controllers, and trying to get people away from using glue traps and then sticky fly traps as well. They're awful. They get wrapped around the bats. If a bat flies on their wrist and that's hanging in the attic, the bat will get tangled up in it. And it's really hard to untangle it and get the adhesive off them. So if you can sort of promote, and if you see them even for sale in garden centres or something, maybe say something about them that they shouldn't really be on sale. Glue traps in particular too are horrific for all wildlife, not just bats.
And then Ruth has asked, does a single species prefer different places for maternal roosts versus hibernation roosts?
That's what we don't really know about. We do know that during hibernation they need cooler temperatures. And then during the summer, they need warmer temperatures for the pups, because when the pups are born, they don't have fur. And when they're usually in a maternity colony, it's really hot inside. So they would go for the attics and cavity walls and things like that, where it's nice and safe and cozy. And then in the winter, they need to be colder, so that they can get their body temperature down and their heart rate down, and they go on to torpor. So there is definitely a temperature difference, but we don't really know enough about hibernation sites in Northern Ireland, but it's something that we're going to be working on.
Yep. And then Polly has asked why she doesn't have bats. So how can I encourage them? I have a full pond of frogs in a very wild garden. I know you've obviously been through, ways that we can make our gardens more bat friendly. But yeah.
Could be a number of reasons. It could be that they're roosting somewhere like great nearby. There could be a big building there. There could be loads of big trees that they've chosen to roost there. But the best thing to do is cut up bat boxes and wait for 2 years. Like, don't get discouraged if the bats don't come in there. Like, that same year that you put them up, it can take them 2 years, maybe even to find that bat box. So stick at it, and if you need bat detectors and things, or if you want to organise something in your local community, get in contact with us, and we could probably come out and do a wee sort of walk around with you as well, see what's actually going on.
Patience then, if you've got everything in place. And Polly also asked, who was the artist that you showed?
Artist? What artist?
Polly, if you're still on the call, if you want to unmute, we're maybe forgetting something that was mentioned, but if you want to ask Karen, feel free
Or
to.
drop me a wee email either.
Yeah.
I
Holly
think
there.
no, this is someone else. I was saying that I think the one that she's talking about is the one where you show the different life cycles of the bat. She can answer herself if you want to.
Okay.
The life cycle, that's Mary Louise, and she did the art diagrams and things for the Learn About Bats website.
Okay.
So Bat Conservation Ireland has a dedicated website called Learn About Bats, and then she has done all the beautiful graphics and all the wee images and all that you see here on that. They're really like child friendly. They look really cute and colourful, and also if you go to Learn About Bats, you'll see her information on there as well.
Perfect. And then Catherine has asked, how can people get help putting bat boxes in their garden?
You can actually build your own. If you want a challenge, I'm no good at woodwork, don't even ask me. You can either build your own, or you can buy them online. So there's different types of bat boxes. You can get wooden ones, which are okay if you have a sheltered area, because the wood can degrade really fast. It has to be an untreated wood as well. It can't be varnished or anything like that. But the best ones are the Woodcreek bat boxes, because they have different temperatures inside them, and the bats tend to go for that. So that's what I was saying to you. There's a possibility of us giving bat boxes to Glenarm Reserve. So anybody that's interested in learning about bat boxes, if we are doing something along them lines with yourselves, you're all welcome to come along and watch us putting them up, and we can do the monitoring as well too and check them.
Great. Definitely try and make that happen. And then Eleanor has asked, what is the recommended height to hang a bat box, and should it have one chamber or several chambers?
It depends on species, but we usually say between 3 and 5 meters is the good height to put up a bat box. Having different types of bat boxes is good too, because different species might prefer single chamber, double chamber. Some might prefer the wooden one to the Woodcreek. So it's good just having, and it all depends on your garden too, what way it's facing, what direction it's facing, where the prevailing wind and all is. So as a general guide, when you put up a bat box, make sure that it's up high enough that there's nothing sort of blocking the ladder underneath, so that the bats have a clear flight path when they're coming out. Putting it away from prevailing winds, so either putting it sort of under an open shed, or somewhere sheltered basically, so that the wind doesn't blow it over and the bats can emerge in a nice covered sheltered area. And away from lighting as well. No lighting near the bat boxes is a good key, because if there's lighting near it, they're likely not going to be foraging around, and they probably won't find it. But pipistrelles and lizards aren't as bothered by lighting as the other species are, so there's that as well. You might get pipistrelles using it or lizards using it.
Well, we can all save electricity by having less lights on. And Emily has asked, are there any health risks associated with bats in Ireland?
Not that we know of. There's no rabies in Ireland, and the only thing with bats is if you get a lot of bats in an attic with their droppings, if you have asthma or something, like when you pop bat poo in your hand like you do, and you crumble it, it turns to dust. So some people with asthma might be allergic to the dust. So if you do have bats in your attic and you have asthma or something, contact us and we can give you advice on the best course of action to take there. But as far as diseases and things like that, there's none that we're concerned about in Ireland.
Great. And then Karen has asked, how do you watch bats fly when they fly so fast? Especially if you're doing maybe surveys.
See if you sit out in the evening just at sunset and just as the sun's going down, that's the time the bats start to emerge. So it's really easy. See if the sky's the light colour too. You can see them against that kind of light sky. But another good one is having a bat detector. So say you were a volunteer with the Debentons Waterway Scheme, a bat detector's posted out to you and you'll be able to listen for the bats using the bat detector. And using that detector helps you sort of hone in on where the bats are, because the louder it gets and the stronger the sound, the closer the bat is. So you'll be able to find it directional with the bat detector as well to see where they are. So sitting out in the evening, if you do have bats in your garden or coming out of your house just after sunset, is a great time to watch them. If it's pitch black, it's unlikely you'll see them. They're really fast. Especially if you're surveying something like brown long-eared, they're near impossible to see without night vision and without the detectors and stuff. So if you have like pipistrelles and things and liselers, you'll see like sometimes even before sunset, they fly really high above the trees and all. And sometimes again confused with swifts. So there's some species are easier to see than others. So it just depends on where you are.
And then Jackie has put up a bat box, but last year there only seemed to be one flying about. Is that normal?
Yeah, it depends on what the population is near you. If there's a great roost, there could be a maternity colony sort of close to you, and the juveniles might find your bat box and might start using your bat box because they'll move away from the maternity colony and have their own roost. So that's not unusual. You might see like year on year more bats finding it. So if you keep a wee eye on that and sort of log how many you see, that would count as a roost count as well. So if you keep an eye on your bat box and see how many bats are flying out of it, that would count as a roost count. So if you need information about how to do roost counts, you can just contact us or Bat Conservation Trust. They run the roost count program.
Great. And then Louise asks, do bats show a preference to roost in rural areas compared to urban?
Again, it all depends on the species and the area and the local populations that's already there. The likes of gnaters and brown long-eared, they'll prefer dark areas mostly. So the gnaters and whiskered or woodland species, you get brown long-eared as well in woodland, but in urban areas, because soprano pipistrelle, common pipistrelle, and liselers aren't that affected by lighting, they don't seem to be as bothered. You're more likely to find those sorts of species in an urban environment. But there's been sort of outliers in both of those. You may find brown long-eared in the middle of a housing estate, which we have done actually. There was one in the middle of Strabane, and I found a whisker too in like a busy city street as well. But that was sort of the habitat was weird, and there was an ancient woodland not too far from there. So that can sometimes happen, crossovers.
And then a couple of people have asked what type of bat detector you would recommend.
If you're just starting out, go for the heterodyne, so the likes of the magenta. They're sort of cost effective. You might even get them cheaper on eBay or something. They would probably be the best because they have a good microphone, they're loud, and they pick up the bats really easily as well too. So if you're just starting out, definitely go for that. But for more advanced bat detectors, there's loads of advice on Bat Conservation Trust and Bat Conservation Ireland's website that you can check out there.
Brilliant. If anyone has any other questions, just before we wrap up, you're welcome to come off mute and ask Karen directly, or if you feel more comfortable, just pop in the chat just before we finish up for this evening. Sarah says, thank you, Karen. The talk was brilliant and very informative.
Thank you.
Well, if no one has any other questions, I just want to quickly share about some of our final talks in the series. So just give me a moment to load that up.
Is there a preferred temperature for where bats live? Like, what type of temperature would you like where they're living at?
Not a specific temperature. Like as I was saying, it all depends. It can get too hot in an attic during the summer. Like if there was a heat wave, you might find bats coming outside the roost to cool off. But for maternity colonies, they always prefer warmer. I don't have an exact temperature, but I can find out for you. And then I was saying then too that hibernation, they prefer cooler areas, but there's some species like Tibetans that don't like the heat at all. You'll find them mostly in colder roosts like stone walls, bridges, and stone buildings and all too. So it all depends on the species really. But mostly the pipistrelles would prefer the heat that we're finding because you find them mostly in houses, like the cavity walls and the attics and things.
Lots of lovely comments in the chat there. People really enjoying the talk, really interesting and informative. Thank you. So that's great that so many people have enjoyed it. Hopefully my screen is going to work. So just to let everyone know about the final 2 talks in our winter series, hopefully everyone can see that screen. So next Wednesday, the 12th of March, we have Maureen Carville, our Let Nature In officer, and she's going to be talking about how we can help hedgehogs. And then the week after that, Wednesday the 19th, we have Rosemary Mulholland, our head of nature recovery, and she is going to be talking all about creating a butterfly-friendly garden. We're also going to be launching our in-person events very soon, so please keep an eye out on our events page on our website, our social media, and then also in your email inboxes for those details coming soon. We've got some really brilliant in-person events coming up. I just want to thank Karen again for taking some time out of her evening to chat with everyone. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and from the comments, I think everyone else really enjoyed it too. So thank you, Karen, and thank you to everyone for joining us, to our members for your ongoing support. And if anyone's not a member and would consider joining our community of nature lovers, we're always looking for more supporters to help bring nature back across Northern Ireland. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the evening, and we hope to see you at an event again soon. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Can I just ask one last question?
Sure.
Yes.
What's the smallest and the biggest type of bat?
In Northern Ireland or
in the world in general?
In the world?
Yeah, in the world.
In the world, the biggest one is the giant golden crowned flying fox, and the smallest is the Katie's hognose bat, or bumblebee bat, it's sometimes called.
Okay. Also, I have actually seen bats that like this wee like stone tunnel, which would have led to a castle over in Antrim Castle Gardens, if you know where that is.
I do, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, so
there's loads of bats around there.
Yeah, it's closed off. Just say it's gotten special permission from someone around there. Yeah, an employee. Hello.
Oh, was there another question? So yes, thank you, everyone. There will be a recording of this sent out in the next couple of days, so look out for that in your email inboxes. But yeah, thank you, everyone, for joining, and we hope to see you again soon. And thank you again, Karen.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.